For more on this story, we're pleased to be joined by Newsmax TV political analyst and presidential strategist Dick Morris. Dick, of course, also the author of the book Power Grab, Obama's Dangerous Plan for a One-Party Nation. Meantime, from Newsmax New York, the former editor-in-chief of the New York Times Magazine, Ed Klein, joins us. Ed is the author of the book Unlikeable, The Problem with Hillary. So, Dick Morris, who is the strongest GOP candidate against Hillary Clinton?
It's hard to measure that at this point. Probably the one who would do the best in the polls, I'm guessing, would be Marco Rubio, might be Jeb Bush, worst would probably be Donald Trump, but you can't really go by that yet because no candidate has full name recognition. Many voters in that are voting in a one-horse contest. And Hillary's ratings against the Republican field are indicative less of the Republican field's strengths and weaknesses than Hillary's strength and weakness. Back when Hillary was getting clobbered before the Benghazi hearings, she was losing to everybody. Now, when she's recovered somewhat, she's beating everybody. Now that we have the new State Department and FBI information, maybe she'll go back to losing again. But this is much more a measurement of Hillary than at this point of parsing the difference between the Republican candidates.
Ed Klein, in your most recent column, you write that Bill Clinton thinks Marco Rubio is the biggest threat to Mrs. Clinton. Why is that?
It was at a dinner party that Bill and Hillary gave at their home in Chappaqua that he was asked by a group of friends, go through the Republican candidates and tell us who you think will be the greatest threat to Hillary. And he went through them one by one, and when he got to Marco Rubio, he said he thought Rubio could challenge her on a whole series of platforms. Young, generational change, Hispanic, and a sense that he represents the future, whereas she represents the past.
Well, in the here and now, in terms of the Republican field, Donald Trump named his two main challengers the way he sees it within the GOP in an interview on Fox. Let's take a listen to what the Donald had to say.
Well, I would say that people are thinking in terms of Cruz and Rubio. They say on the other side, the side where they've been elected to office.
So, gentlemen, you heard Trump say it's Rubio and Cruz as his greatest threat. Dick, do you agree?
Yeah, I think that I believe Carson at some point is going to fade. I'm anxiously awaiting the post-debate polls, and we'll see if another lackluster performance impacts him. Eventually it will. Trump may or may not fade. If Trump does fade, then it would be a race between Rubio and Cruz, with Cruz kind of representing the conservatives and Rubio kind of representing the establishment.
The FBI is now investigating if Mrs. Clinton violated U.S. Code 18, Section 1001, a provision that pertains to, quote, materially false statements given either in writing, orally, or through a third party. A felony, that's a felony punishable by 5 years in prison. Whatever the FBI finds, Ed, do you believe this Justice Department would indict Mrs. Clinton?
Well, it's a complicated story because, first of all, in the Justice Department right now, there are 8 prosecutors working with the FBI on this case. And these are civil servant prosecutors. They're not political appointees. Once they get the referral from the FBI, they have to make a recommendation to Loretta Lynch, the Attorney General, whether or not to indict Hillary, whether there's a case that they can win in court. And of course, then it becomes part legal and part political because obviously Barack Obama is going to have a lot to say about that. And in my view, based on my reporting, Barack Obama is ambivalent about this. On the one hand, he doesn't want to see Hillary in the White House. He would like to see his own kind of candidate, Biden, Elizabeth Warren. On the other hand, if Hillary is indicted, there will be a convulsion in the political system. There's no question about that. Every newspaper headline for months will be about Hillary and the indictment. It'll overwhelm the last several months of Obama's presidency and, in his view, kind of make him leave the White House under a kind of cloud. And he doesn't want that, obviously.
Let's talk about numbers, and things don't appear to be clearing up for Mrs. Clinton. Miranda cited that new McClatchy poll, the McClatchy-Marist poll, indicating that a majority of Americans think that Hillary's got problems. A total of 68% think she did something wrong, either ethically or legally, with her email server. In the court of public opinion, given that perception, is her fate sealed, or can she change it during the course of a campaign, Dick Morris?
I don't think she can change it. I think she can bury it a little bit beneath some dirt of negatives on her opponents and building up her own credentials. But it can always be brought to the surface and will always be there to bite her. The important thing about these data is that you could ask people, do you agree or disagree that Hillary is the worst person in the entire world? And 40% of the American people would say yes, and it might get up to 44 or 45. The question is, what happens when you get a number over than 50, where a lot of the votes she needs say that that's true? And that's why the McClatchy poll was so important. 28% said she did something illegal. Well, fine, they're the Republican base. They would never vote for her anyway. But 40% said, well, it wasn't illegal, but it wasn't nothing either. It was unethical. And that indicates a real openness to negative impressions. And while I believe that Biden's failure to run makes it politically infeasible to indict Hillary Clinton, it sure doesn't stop the cavalcade and the cascade of accusations and leaks and facts coming out of this investigation.
We continue to do some poll watching, but this time we're citing a new Gallup poll that indicates 53% of Americans oppose sending ground troops to fight militants in the Middle East. Ed, in your opinion, are the Clintons prepared should the whole notion of sending ground troops come up in this campaign? We heard Hillary say she doesn't want to send any. So did she get out in front of this issue?
Well, I don't think she's out in front because clearly there are months and months for this primary campaign and then the presidential campaign. We don't know what is going to happen on the ground in Syria, in Iraq, what Vladimir Putin is going to do with his new ally, Iran, in that area of the world. Things can change dramatically. The next president of the United States is going to face a high level of critical decision-making about what to do regarding ISIS, because ISIS, if it continues to grow, will become a direct threat to our homeland. And I think I would not be surprised to see the next president taking a much more aggressive role with boots on the ground in that part of the world.
Ed Klein at Newsmax New York. Dick Morris checking in from Pennsylvania tonight. Gentlemen, you have our thanks. And speaking of polls, we want to know who you think won the debate on Tuesday night. You can cast your vote at NewsmaxPolls.com. Once again, that's NewsmaxPolls.com. And would you care to comment on the campaign? We'd love to hear from you. Here's how you can do it. Go to NewsmaxTV.com/comments. And when we come back, what's going on at college campuses around the country? Rick Unger and Tim Jones will talk about it next.